Hello and welcome to the Theorem podcast. This is your host, Aspasia, and I'm here to share a different perspective on living life. The podcast today is about a method of active listening that improves and enriches people's lives. So let's get on this journey as we share experiences that may be a bit different and new, but that makes them all the more intriguing and useful. Hello. How are you doing today? We're here to discuss reevaluation counseling and its various uses in our everyday lives. We have Margie Doyle Papadopoulou with us today. She is the area reference person for the Athens, Greece community of reevaluation counseling, RC. She has been a member of RC for over 42 years and conducts workshops on topics such as women's liberation, parents' liberation, eliminating white racism, and the transformation of society and leadership. She is a great proponent of language liberation policy in the international RC community. She has been my co-counselor for years, and using Annalise's words, Margie is a beacon to the local but also the international RC communities. Kalimera, Margie! I'm very glad you're here.
Thank you very much for inviting me and for your kind words.
Well, for the listeners who are new to this, it would be great to start off with what exactly is reevaluation counseling.
Okay. Reevaluation counseling is something that started many, many years ago, about 60 years ago, from just a chance situation. A man saw a friend in distress, very upset, couldn't handle his everyday life, and he just decided that he would listen to him. He would keep him close and listen to him. And from that, it all evolved. It's a way of learning to really listen to people so that they can get in touch with themselves, so they can actually hear themselves. And I can reverse that and say that when somebody listens to me, I get to hear and to understand myself better. I get to free up the things that are blocking me from doing what I want, from doing what's good for me. And many of these things that, they're blocked just by silly things, old messages, old feelings. And once people put attention on it and are listened to with respect, then we get to unravel all these knots and to figure things out for ourselves. Yeah. The basic tenet is to reclaim our intelligence and to commit to helping other people do the same thing. There's no other things you have to believe. The people have different belief systems, we're at different ages, religions, nationalities, languages. It's just a commitment to learn how to really listen to people and to help them reclaim the intelligence that gets kind of trapped because of the hurts that we have, just because we're human beings and things happen.
Margie, it sounds ideal and amazing, but could you please tell me and our audience, how does this work in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, you have to have at least two people, and you decide how much time you have to spend together, and you divide the time equally, and you exchange roles. For the first half of the time that's available, one person is the speaker, we call the client, and the second person is the listener, the counselor. And then after the halfway mark, we change roles again, and the speaker becomes the listener and the listener becomes the speaker. And we pay attention to people. We don't give advice. We don't tell people what to do. We don't criticize. We accept people where they are and try to listen with our ears and our minds and our hearts.
It sounds pretty simple.
It's something anybody can do. It takes a decision, and that's it.
How did you get into RC? What led you there?
Very funny story. First of all, I was a mother with a 9-month-old child, and a friend called and said that there were a group of women who wanted to get together to talk about what we thought would be the best way to feed our children. Different ways. This is way back when. My first child is now 44 years old. And from there, I met a woman who invited me into a mother's group where we would just talk about things that were happening for us. And it was a time when I was trying to do everything I could for my child to make things right, but I wasn't happy. I had no time for me. I didn't know how to find a place for myself, except for being a mother and doing and trying. And and I was doing a good job, but it just didn't have space for me. So I joined this group. My husband was very good about taking care of the child, and we met every 3 weeks. And while I was there, I noticed some periodicals that my friend had. They were on the shelf in her room. And I said, "What are those?" And she said, "Oh, this is from an organization that I belong to, which was Reevaluation Counseling." And she said, when we meet people and we think that they're living their lives well, that they're intelligent, and they just need a hand at taking the next step, then we invite them in. And so I stood there, and she didn't invite me. And I thought, well, maybe my life isn't as good as she thinks it should be. Maybe she doesn't think I'm intelligent. And then a year later, she was doing an introduction to invite friends and tell them what reevaluation counseling is. And she said, "Would you like to come?" And I said, "Oh, so now I'm intelligent enough. Thank you very much." We're still friends after all these years. She's a very big part of my life, and we've moved on in many different ways together. So
I think that what you said about early motherhood is something that most moms identify with. You tend to lose yourself in the beginning. And I'm wondering, how has RC impacted your personal relations within your family?
well, when my children were young, it was really very valuable because there's so much happening in the world, and I was I wanted my children to trust. I wanted them to believe in people. And they would get confused. But if people are good, why do they do these things? And the theory of counseling helped me to explain to them about people getting hurt. And when we get hurt, we start acting irrationally if we don't manage to work on it, if we don't work through the feelings. And the one distress gets piled up on top of the other so that we develop patterns, ways of acting when it's completely irrational for the situation. And it helped my children to know that. And then in our own interactions, I was able to see that when my children were what some people would call naughty, that they were acting out, they were trying to get rid of these distresses, they were trying to work on the hurts. And it gave me a better understanding that, well, we have all these bodily things that are forbidden. You're not supposed to laugh too much. You're definitely not supposed to cry. If you start shaking, then you're really weird. But these are things that the body does. A baby will cry because it's hurt. If it's not hurt, its attention is just out. It's always reaching out, trying to learn, trying to figure things out. And as the hurts get built up, we stop these things. Babies are always told, "Oh, don't cry. Oh, look at this. Give them the keys. The keys will calm them down and it'll distract them from the hurt." Well, we shouldn't be distracted from the hurts. And so it helped me to allow my children to, we call discharging counseling, but other people call acting out. But they weren't acting out. They were actually trying to maintain their health, trying to keep themselves clear. And so it's been very valuable. And of course, with adults, like being in a marriage, it's not always so easy. But when the tensions are high, it's good to be able to step back and to just listen. Because, well, one day I remember my husband he was furious. And he said some very hurtful things to me. He was yelling, and I just sat there because it was so absurd what he was saying. I knew that it wasn't about me. And the next day he came up to me and he said, "Thank you." I said, "What for?" He said, "For yesterday." I said, "Well, a lot of things happened yesterday." He said, "But you kept your mouth shut." He said, "When I was saying all those things, there was a voice in my head saying, 'Why are you saying this? This has nothing to do with her.'" So it's like, it really helped that he could do that. He needed to get something out. And for me not to take it personal, yeah, I don't always manage. Sometimes I fail, But yeah, it helps in all relationships in that way, to realize that when somebody is acting out and they're in your space, they're accusing you or they're angry at you or whatever, that most of the time it really doesn't have to do with you. It has to do with something else that's bothering them, and many times things that happened to them when they were young. But they've been reminded of it by a smell, by a color, by anything. Yeah.
So you've mentioned how you've used RC, well, its principles with your kids and your husband. And I'm wondering, um, what happens when a person has the chance to discharge, to act out, and not be taken personally by the other?
Well, it's always better if we do this discharging and acting out in an agreed upon situation, because then the lines are clear. You know that if the person yells and screams at you, that it's not about you. They're using your attention. And what happens by giving this non-judgmental attention, we clear up our thinking. We get to think better. We get to realize that, maybe my boss didn't really do anything horrible. It's just that it reminded me of my father. And so I felt really hurt when in essence, it had nothing to do with that. And so this attention it's like it's something very special. When you put attention on somebody, they really do get to hear themselves and to figure things out. And aside from that, I mean, I can remember as a child, my grandmother knew nothing about this. She went to third grade, but she was one of the women who would, if she could see you were upset, she would say, "What you need is a good cry." And that was it. Because we do all know, even though it's taboo, we know that when we have a good cry, that things kind of ease up, the tension goes away, and we figure things out much more clearly. And so having this attention clears the mind. It gives us a different perspective. It gives us energy to look at things and to face them in a different way. And so we're constantly clearing up the confusion in our heads and making better decisions for our lives. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. To me, it sounds like applied love and acceptance.
Yeah, I've never said it that way, but yeah.
Well, the way you described it now, that's what I
Yeah,
felt.
yeah. No, it is. It's just I'm thinking that it doesn't. It takes a decision each time. There are some people it's very, very easy to listen to, and other people you have to just make a decision. This is a human being. That means this person is good, no matter what they believe, even though they believe so differently from me. My giving them attention will help them to make better decisions. But I don't get to decide what those decisions are. I mean, the person might decide to
Mm-hmm.
vote for something that is completely against my principles, but they're still good people. And so I get to deal with that. So it has to do with love and
Hmm.
acceptance. Yeah.
Well, you just mentioned differences. And, RC expands the horizons and the importance of being together despite differences. Could you please talk to me about this?
Well, one thing that has happened is that my life has become much more diverse. Most of us live in neighborhoods where everybody looks kind of the same. You're all, the same color, the same language, maybe the same religion, same ethnic background. And in being in RC, we do work in separate groups, but then we come together. And I have people who really care about me and who I care about all over the globe. It's amazing. Like I am a person who has reached out, and I do have people from other nationalities, people of other races in my life, but it's made it even more diversified. Like I know some Africans here in Greece, but getting to meet Africans who still live in Africa, it's a whole different perspective. It's a whole different way of life. And so I get to know things. And you can no longer think that the world is just the way that you live it, that this is the right way to do things, that my ideas are the correct ones. Because you hear from all these different people, just different ways of doing things. That, I make my potatoes this way, but you do this, and somebody else does this, and somebody else. None of it's bad. It's all, good food. But once upon a time, I thought, well, this is the way you do it, and it's just different. And it's, potatoes is a very mundane example. But when it comes to politics, to climate change, we're working with people all around the world. Right now, there are people from Reevaluation Counseling in Egypt for COP27. And the delegation is mostly people of color from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East, people from the United States, from South America, Europe. But the majority of people are people of color and people from places where the climate emergency is right in their faces. They live it every day. They can't pretend. Where I am, we're all very happy because the weather is so beautiful. And we forget that it's so beautiful, but this isn't the time of year to be beautiful in that way. And we just enjoy it. But where they are, every day they're struggling to survive with the changes. And so this brings reality into my life. It's very important because we'll never find solutions for big problems if I just keep seeing the world the way it looks in my neighborhood or in my country. When I see how it is for other people, I counsel with people from Russia, and it's just amazing what they're going through. It's amazing. And it's very important for me to know that, because now with the war in the Ukraine, people say, oh, Russians. Well, I know some Russians that are just, in Israel, the conflict with Israel and Palestine. I know people who are working so hard to solve this situation. They actively go and they join Palestinians to pick olives with them so that the people who attack the Palestinians won't do it because there are Israelis there. Yes, so Jewish Israelis, because there are Palestinian Israelis too. Yeah, it's just broadened my concept about everything. I get a lot of first-hand information from a lot of people rather than from newspapers that always have their own perspective. Of course, people have their own perspectives, but these are people who are living these situations.
Yeah. This is all inspiring to me in the sense that this oneness that we feel when we are in RC, when we do this, at least to me, it makes me feel like we're all brothers and sisters, and that we are different, but at the same time, we are the same. And this warms my heart.
It's very encouraging when you listen to somebody who's a different age, a different color, a different religion, a different nationality, and you see that you have so many commonalities. Like we have the same hurts and we have the same joys. And so it helps to heal things. Yeah.
Yes, and RC allows for such a deep, I'll say, penetration into somebody's thoughts and feelings. And penetration is a very harsh word, like a view.
It's a connection. You get to connect with these.
Connect, yes, and yes, and this kind of connection that doesn't go along with everyday things, and it's just a dive into somebody's thoughts and feelings, allows for a unique kind of connection.
There are people in the world who I've never shook hands with, who know me much better than people who I actually live in the same house with. Because they've taken the time to stop and to listen and to really hear what's happening. And when we're in our everyday situations, many times people don't take the time. They're too busy. And that's not a criticism. It's life kind of pushes us to that. But when you make a decision to stop and to listen, then you really learn a lot. Yeah. And that's the thing that I said before, that when you cry, You release the tensions. When you laugh, when you shake, all these things are important. But the thing is also listening to you when you're doing that is just as important to me as when I do my own work. It changes me. It helps me to be
Mm-hmm.
a more open, a better person. Yeah.
Margie, one of the most important aspects for you in RC is language liberation, which um, is, in other words, interpretation, and everybody using their mother tongue. Why do you think this is important, and how does it impact people?
Well, first of all, there's the whole thing of dominance. English, the English language is just, it's a wonderful tool. It's a wonderful thing to be able to bridge. Like here we are speaking in English so that this is accessible to a lot of people. But the thing is, we English speakers take it for granted that, oh, well, just learn English and everything will be fine. And that's a real disrespect to other people's integrity. Each culture has its own, every language has its own philosophy, a way of approaching life. And it's important for each one of us to be able to express ourselves from that point of view. When I speak my language, I think more clearly and I can get in touch with my feelings more clearly. Like we talk about these hurts that need to be discharged, that we need to cry about or laugh about or just talk about. Um, these hurts, most of them were put in us, we suffered these things as very young people in our own mother language. And so to really unravel them and to open them up, I need to be using my mother tongue again. Of course, my mother tongue is English, but I've just learned to understand this. We get to understand our intelligence and use our intelligence more easily, better when we're speaking our own language, and we get to undo the knots, the difficulties that we carry when we use our own language. And then there's the whole thing of going against capitalism and imperialism and all the things that just say, more and more and learn English and then it'll be all right. As long as we all know English, where's the problem? Well, it's a problem. We're losing an unbelievable richness when so many languages die off. We talk about dying species from climate change. Languages are dying off. And not just because people are disappearing, but because they're being forced to. There are a lot of young people who don't want to speak their own language because if you use technology, it's all in English. And so, here we go. And it also leaves people out. Like some people don't understand. Some of these workshops that we've had, people could not attend and really participate if there weren't interpretation. We need the interpreting so that people can understand and then express themselves as well. So it's very, very important. Yeah. In fact, it's probably very key to finding solutions to all the difficulties that we face in the world today, because each person needs to be themselves and reclaim their power. And part of reclaiming your power is being able to speak your own language with respect from other people, and not this feeling of, oh, you don't know English. What's wrong? Why didn't you learn English? Well, I was doing other important things, and yeah.
Yeah, so this way, people of different nationalities will have the same value and the same rights. And yeah, well, I hadn't thought of it this way, but yes, that would create such a
It
improvement
promotes equality. It
in the
promotes
world.
equality.
Yep.
Whoever speaks English best is the most intelligent. No. No. Yeah. And we lose so much when we don't get to hear these other people who haven't learned English, and it's fine not to learn English, but we lose all their wisdom. People who have good thinking and can really bring us back to traditional values that would take us away from the way we're destroying the earth. It's very, very important. Yeah. I love you asking me these
Hmm.
questions.
Now, what you got me thinking is about older people who are in their retirement, in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and they feel bored, they feel lonely or left out in a way. But I see you're being active, you're being involved in life, you have ongoing goals and dreams. And how is this relevant to RC?
Well, RC started 60 years ago, like I said. And so a lot of us who have stuck with it, like for me, it's 43 years about, um, we've learned a lot and we have a lot to give. And there's no way of being left out. But because there are so many of us who are over 50, over 60, I'm 77, and we work a lot on this issue because there is a huge oppression in the world towards every age. You're always too young or too old for some reason.
Mhm.
And there's so much in the society that says if you're not producing, and that could mean babies, or it could mean on the assembly line or anything else, making money, then you're really not of much use. And we go against that completely. We can see ourselves how much we do. There are so many people my age, around my age, involved in the Extinction Rebellion and other organizations, 350. I mean, and they're just doing things. They're putting in their time. They're using their retirement in a way that contributes so much to the society and is often not acknowledged because they're not making money or babies, one or the other. It's like, yeah. So being old is, well, we call ourselves elders, and that takes us back to, well, that's a word that reminds me of native peoples, indigenous peoples, the respect they had for the elders, and using the word elders means wisdom, but a wisdom that doesn't say, I know you should listen to me because I've been alive for so long. It's not that. It's a sharing, a cooperation that, yes, I want you to lead and I will be beside you to give you any ideas that I can and to listen to your ideas and to see that we move on together. It's not like, I'm old and therefore I'm wise and I deserve your respect. I deserve your respect because I'm a human being, not because of my age. And you deserve my respect. And so an attempt to take age out of the qualifications. You're never too young and you're never too old. There's always something somebody can contribute. There's always a way that, well, we're just valuable as human beings, regardless of age.
Um, well, I love this. And the fact that I have the opportunity to interact with you and do it like every week um, is a proof that there is so much for me to learn from you. And I learned so much from you. And also, this interaction and the fact that we are in a way equal equals doing RC together um, is something that yes, it shows me that age shouldn't be something that separates us.
I mean, as an elder, I
And
gained so much from working with people who are younger than me. I have friends who really their only company is other people their own age. And that's a limitation. It's a wonderful thing.
mhm.
Keep touch with your friends. Your age group is fantastic. But having contact in meaningful ways with people who are younger is just a way to stay young in your heart and just to stay involved in life. And, who doesn't want that? It's, yeah. No corners for me. Thank you. I want to be in the circle.
All right. um, in the beginning, you mentioned how you've used RC with your husband. And I have used RC with my partner over the years. Each time our conversations and our interactions reach a dead end or get stuck in the, I don't know, frustration valley. And it works freaking miracles. It melts ego away and it allows us to be in each other's shoes and see each other's perspective through a prism of love and compassion and understanding and union. And I'm amazed each time. I can't recommend it enough. What would your suggestions be for listeners? Um, how can they use RC in their everyday lives? Or, um, yeah, how can RC help them live more consciously?
Well, the basic theory of counseling says that all human beings are intelligent, unless we've uh,
Mhm.
had some kind of accident or been born with some kind of defects in the brain, biological, then we're all intelligent. We all want to learn. We all want to love and be loved. We all naturally have this reaching out to learn, this zest for life. We're all good, in spite of the fact that so many bad things happen. We are, at our core, we are good. And so remembering this, people immediately will say, what, even Hitler? It's a horrible example. But yeah, the thing is that there was so much distress in his life that he never got to handle, that he did horrible, horrible things. But we are not the things we do. We are good people who sometimes make huge mistakes. And remembering that, it helps us to confront the situations. And it doesn't mean to allow bad things to happen and say, oh, it's all right, he's good, let it happen. No, it means figuring out, by working on our feelings, figuring out how to stop something in a human way, to stop the bad, but acknowledge the person. We use the expression to separate the person from the pattern. We learn to act in ways that are irrational, but there's also behind that irrational action, there's a good person. And so we separate the two, and it makes it much easier to find solutions and to move on.
Who and how can people do reevaluation counseling? How can they find RC?
Well, you can Google rc.org, O-R-G. Um, you can call the office there and they will give you the number of organizers in your area, your country. There's a periodical that comes out 4 times a year. And at the back of that, there are names for every country where counseling takes place of the responsible people, the people who have learned counseling and organize and teach. And then now with technology, even if there's not a community in your country, your area, we managed to find classes for people online. And so it's something that, Zoom has, COVID has done a lot of damage because we don't get to meet in person. We haven't for a long time. We will again. But meeting on Zoom means meeting with people from all over the world. And yeah, there are ways of getting in touch. The central offices are always thrilled to get people in touch with others. I've 3, 4 times I've had people send me emails because they got my address from the central office in Seattle, and they write to me, and then we start a relationship, a counseling relationship. And it's important for it to stay a counseling relationship. Like these people, I don't teach them English, and I don't babysit their children, and I don't go out to the movies with them, but I do my best to find a space to have what we call a session, this thing of having a common time and dividing it and working together. And of course, there are classes first. You learn how to do it. And then once you have been through a fundamentals class, you have sessions you can have immediately, but then you can join other groups. We have what we call support groups, and they're on all these different topics. Like in the beginning, you said that the issues that I deal with, like women's liberation, parents' liberation, eliminating white racism, these are all support groups that I organize, and there are others. We have one on creativity. We have one on migration. We have one that's just general, where the organizer, the leader of the group, decides on an issue every week, and we work on that. And so it's yeah. I've just had an email from a lead or a teacher in England who is introducing me to a Greek woman who's going to move back to Greece. And she's very excited about meeting the Greek community. So it's lovely. She learned counseling in England, but she's moving back to Greece. And so she doesn't have to give it up. She'll be in touch with us here. And that will be nice. It'll be for us, it'll be new ideas, new perspective. She had a different teacher. She learned it in English, not in Greek. And so it's a addition to the variety, the diversity that we seek. That's good.
Great. Well, Margie, thank you very, very much for everything you've shared. I think that the way you talked about RC is a way that can inspire even someone that will never ever attend a class or do a proper session with
True.
someone. But people can take away, you know, bits and pieces and apply them in their lives. And yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you very,
Well,
very
thank
much.
you. It's a lot of fun. Again, when we get attention, we hear things. And I heard myself saying things that I hadn't really clarified for myself for a long time. I hadn't thought about. And so it was nice to have this review of what I really do believe and what I've gained from RC. So I thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Theorem podcast. Connect with me on social media at Aspasia and at theorem.podcast and share your thoughts. You may support us on Patreon. Visit the website aspasiaprovu.com/theorem for more. Τα λέμε σύντομα. Meaning talk to you soon in Greek. Aspasia's Theorem podcast does not provide advice, medical or any other kind. It just presents the opinions of its host and guests. If you have any specific problems, please visit your physician or a medical expert for help. Anything said should not be taken as a replacement for medical, clinical, or professional advice, diagnosis, or medical intervention. The episodes of Aspasia's Theorem podcast may, at times, cover sensitive topics including, but not limited to, mental health, nutrition, health, politics, spirituality, alternative medicine, energy healing, and the use of plant medicines. You're advised to refrain from continuing if you are adversely impacted by any of these topics.